The 1974 Atlanta Falcons were a historically bad offensive team. They scored the second lowest offensive touchdowns in the history of the 14-game schedule, 10. They only had one game in which they scored more than 14 points. Amazingly, it was against the eventual Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers. No player had more than 2 touchdowns scored all year, and not one player had more than 1 receiving touchdown. Incredible. In half of their games, the Falcons scored less than 10 points. They had the most turnovers in the NFL, as they averaged almost 4 per game. They had the least amount of first downs in the NFL, the least passing yards, a ridiculous total of 1,307, only 93 per game. The least touchdown passes, an incredible total of only 4. The most interceptions thrown, 31. And the lowest number of rushing touchdowns, 6. After a 2-win, 6-loss start to the season, the Falcons fired head coach Norm Van Brocklin. The team had only scored 77 points in those 8 games for a 9.6 average. They replaced him with defensive coordinator Marion Campbell, which was a head-scratching decision because if your team is struggling to score points, why do you tap a defensive coach to be your head coach? The Falcons' offense got worse, way worse. They only scored 34 points in 6 games with Campbell as the head coach, an average of only 5.6 points per game. Unfortunately for the Falcons, star running back Dave Hampton suffered a training camp injury that required him to miss the first 5 regular season games. The prior 2 years, he rushed for 997 and 995 yards respectively. He rushed 14 times for 74 yards in Week 8's 42-7 loss to the Dolphins. The Falcons' best individual rushing output in 1974 was Hampton's 94 yards in Week 14 against Green Bay. Hampton's 464 rushing yards led the Falcons for the season. The team suffered another key injury when starting left tackle Bill Sandman had a slipped disc in his back and was lost for the entire season. The loss of the 7-year veteran was a blow to the offensive line's effectiveness. Running back Art Malone's 410 rushing yards were the second best on the club, and his 2 rushing touchdowns tied him with Hampton for the team lead in that department. Malone was traded to the Eagles on February 17, 1975, for tackle Steve Smith. Promising running back was Haskell Stanback, the Bengals' 1974 fifth-round draft pick out of the University of Tennessee. He had the second best rushing day with 77 yards in Week 5 against the Bears. He was traded to Atlanta with center Tom DeLeon with Atlanta's 1975 third-round draft pick. Atlanta waived DeLeon less than 1 month later, and all he did was play solid ball for 11 seasons with the Browns while making 2 Pro Bowl teams. The third-round draft pick was defensive end Gary Burley, who ended up playing 8 seasons for the Bengals and racking up 32 sacks. This is rookie running back Vince Kendrick's only touchdown. He didn't play in 1975, played 1 game for the Buccaneers in 1976, then called it a career. This is wide receiver Louis Neal's only career rushing attempt, which was for a 1-yard loss. The Falcons didn't have a first-round draft pick in 1974, but they did have 5 rookies make the team, all offensive players. But the best player they drafted, tight end Henry Childs, they let it get away. He played 6 games before being released and then signed as a free agent by the Saints on December 9, 1974. He had a fine 9-year career and made the Pro Bowl squad in 1979. Falcons quarterbacks were sacked to NFL worst 50 times. The Falcons offense was so bad that they only had 6 games with more than 200 yards of total offense. They only had 5 games of greater than 100 yards passing. with only one game with more than 128 passing yards. We'll never see another offense like this. Bob Lee started 9 games, threw 3 touchdowns with 14 interceptions and a team-leading 852 passing yards. Sullivan won the 1971 Heisman Trophy while quarterbacking Auburn. He had finished 6th in 1970. He didn't start any games during his first 2 years with the Falcons after being drafted 40th overall in the second round of the 1972 draft. Big results were expected, but Sullivan only delivered 1 touchdown pass with 8 interceptions while completing just 45.7% of his passes, many of which were under duress, as Falcons quarterbacks were sacked once every 8 dropbacks. Rookie quarterback Kim McQuilkin was drafted in the 4th round out of Lehigh, and he was in way over his head. In Week 13 at Minnesota, the NFL Super Bowl entrant for the season intercepted him twice and sacked him 4 times in a 23-10 loss. In Week 14 at Atlanta, only 10,020 fans showed up. The team set an NFL record with 48,830 no-shows, as well as an NFL record for the most no-shows in a single season with 143,488, which smashed the prior record by 33,000. Tight end Jim Mitchell was one of only 2 receivers of note, as he caught 30 passes for 479 yards, a fine 16.0 yards per catch, and 1 touchdown, which tied for the team lead. Wide receiver Ken Burrow was the team leader with 34 catches, 545 yards, and 1 touchdown. He too had an even 16 yards per catch. Kicker Nick Mickmeyer led the Falcons in scoring with a paltry 39 points. The Falcons were the lowest scoring team since World War II, with only 7.5 points per game by an offense.